Hey.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back for another fantastic virtual tasting with us at Becker Vineyards. I'm Rebecca Nelson, your wine club director. Tonight, we are trying the 2017 Chardonnay Reserve from the Canada Family Vineyard on our week of Chardonnay flight. We also have with us, of course, Dr. Joseph Becker this evening. We also have our winemaker, Jon Leahy, and our general manager, Bret Perrenoud, to go through this fantastic wine with you. I hope you all have it in your glass and are ready to get started. I'm going to turn it over to the gentleman to guide you through this fantastic wine. Enjoy. Cheers.
Well, you hardly let me sign on to Facebook, Rebecca.
Quick.
Exactly. Well, thanks for another great introduction. How's the storm damage up in Iowa? Oh, she's gone. So, Joe, you want to lead us off with a couple of words, sir?
You do. I do. A couple things to say. Number one, I'm joined today by Noel and Buzz and Nolan. All right. So just wanted to mention again, as always, we hope that these tastings give people just a few minutes of distraction from what's going on in the world, and we're always with our frontline physicians and nurses and healthcare providers. And as I mentioned last week, we're also thankful for our teachers. And here for a quick update. First, on our first day of school is Nolan. How was your first day of school?
Good.
And Nathan, you had something interesting happen to you today with grandfather Richard. Do you want to share that?
He can't be here, but I beat him in golf, so here's a card.
Oh, wait a minute. Bring that closer to the camera. Let's see that score. Oh, that's awesome.
So we just wanted to make sure that was well documented. And but as always, it's wonderful being with everybody and to share a glass of wine and to share a glass of this wonderful Chardonnay tonight. Thank you, Buzz.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. Hey, congratulations on the win there. What's that make, twice or three times now?
We lost track.
We lost track. Oh, he's listening.
Yeah.
It's okay. I bet it was the putter. Yeah. Needs a new set of clubs. Hey, Bret, so what about the Canada Chardonnay from 2017?
Yeah, so I remember, this vintage again is the one that's going to go down in history as far as ripe fruit, and I think even the early varieties, like the Chardonnay that get picked so soon, I think that this was still a pretty good example of that. I think it came in at like 25.5. I remember when this one came in, I think it held a lot of acid too, right, John?
It did.
When the chemistries came in, you guys just kept saying that this is like world-class, chemistry, and I'll kind of never forget that. And they had a lot of it too. So we made quite a few cases of this from that vintage. And I think that, to me, it's still obviously in its prime and it's going to last for a long time.
Oh, I think it will too. And I'm sitting here trying to get Rachel's cheat sheet up here that she sent to us.
I've got mine up on my computer behind me.
Right. Somebody asked me a few weeks back, like, why can't you remember? I'm like, well, buddy, because it was 2 years ago and 60 blends.
Right. And we bring in 100 batches of different fruit a year. It's kind of hard to keep all those straight without the cheat sheet.
Yeah, in 2017, we had 106 individual lots of wine that we made. So that's a lot of numbers to keep straight. And I think 2019 broke or equaled that record at 109 or 110 lots. So
yeah, and so typically we have two vintages at the winery at the same time, so we're trying to keep track of like 200 different lots, and a lot could be 5 barrels or it could be 200 barrels, I guess. So that's why we have a fancy software system that keeps it all straight for us.
So John, this obviously we'll talk about the breakdown a little bit, but this block of Chardonnay from Miss Canada's vineyard is pretty exceptional. What do you remember what your first observations were, or what's your first experience like with this block?
Absolutely. I actually was very, very excited back in 2012 when we went up there. We got to see the old block of Chardonnay, the one that Brenda refurbed, rehabbed, and that's what got her into growing the grapes. Seeing that and then seeing the young block and watching what they were doing, it was, but I remember distinctly walking through that vineyard when Bret and I were doing the rounds, introducing me to all the growers. And I just thought, as soon as I walked in there, I was like, this vineyard could be in Napa, California without a problem. You know, maybe just one or two more trees and you probably couldn't tell the difference. but yeah, no, it was, they do a world-class job growing fruit over there. So I kind of want to delve more into the 2017, Bret, because it like you said, it is a vintage for the history books. This one particular, and someone just asked, would you say that the alcohol is uncharacteristically high for a Chardonnay? There is not a typical characteristic of alcohol for any given wine. This is going to be my particular soapbox. Alcohol serves the purpose of fixing the phenolics and as preservation, and is a byproduct of fermentation, not the concentration of fermentation. The only process that concentrates alcohol is distillation. So alcohol for us is a byproduct. It happens because the sugars were higher, we're going to have higher alcohols. But at the same time, as Bret mentioned, the acids were much higher. This is 14.8% alcohol, but I want you to taste it. And I want you to see if it's slightly chilled, that alcohol stays in the background. I decanted about 45 minutes ago. My wine is still slightly cooler than room temperature. It's probably about 60 degrees. And I'm not getting an alcohol nose off of it. Yes, you will get it in the palate a little bit. But Bret, you want to explain too the uniqueness up around Canadas, and I think we've already told my favorite story that you always talk about, the storm splitting and going around there. But
I mean, we've kind of covered it on these other broadcasts, but maybe people haven't seen them. But the soil up there, the rocks are about the size of your fist. They actually had to use a rock auger to drill down and put these, to get the holes in, to put these vines in. The other part I'm going to keep touching on is that most people up there, most growers really shy away from planting Chardonnay because it's such a risk when it comes to the freezing aspects of when spring frost hit. The Chardonnay wakes up a month before a lot of the other varieties, so it's a really, really high susceptible variety for frost damage. That happens all over the world, I guess, too, just because it does bud so early. But they really have a passion for this particular this particular variety off of that old block that she refurbed, and they actually planted a new 5-acre block up next to the Malbec that we have up past their son's house. They put it up there, and everybody kind of laughs. It's a high spot. I think the elevation is 50 feet taller, maybe than what that other vineyard is, but that could make a huge difference as the cold air is draining to the south there. And again, just not very many people up there plant chard, just because it's not a wise decision maybe on the spreadsheet a lot of times.
No, it definitely, there's been some heartbreak there. I'm really enjoying this, and it's funny because, just a prelude to Friday a little bit, we'll be doing the 2018 on Friday, and that's the the Talent Vineyard Chardonnay. They are different creatures, but, some of our Chardonnay in the past has been a blend of both. It just happened 17 and 18 are two separate chards. And I think if you haven't taken the time to save a little Chardonnay for Friday, do so with this and compare it with the Talent. They're excellent Chardonnays, but it'll give you a great idea why there is a difference between the high plains and the hill country. And I think that one. Yeah.
And what I think is so interesting is that, being raised by somebody that loves white Burgundy, and so having a natural bias towards that, and I'm sure, most of our audience knows, Chardonnay is the principal white grape of Burgundy, and we tend to drink a fair amount of Chablis in our household, which I love. But what I think is so interesting about this wine is, to me, it reminds me of sort of the kind of the early 2000s Batard Montrachet. The Chardonnay is such a completely different animal throughout Burgundy, and I just think it's amazing to me that we get these Burgundian qualities in this Texas wine. And I think in a little bit, when you talk about the barrel program, I think it'll be a shock to people that we're able to get to retain the richness and the fruit with the amount of time that these wines spend in oak, and that we can even do that in Texas. And I know that it's a challenge for a lot of growers to do this, but Chardonnay does, I think, amazingly well in Texas. And a year like 2017 can really illustrate that.
Oh yeah, 2017. Well, I wish I'll go gently into the evening. 2017, as a winemaker, was a year that we were allowed to really bloom, as far as experimental fermentations, doing some specialty things, because the fruit straight across the board was so good. We weren't having to worry about a lot of issues coming from the vineyard into the fermentation. So it really allowed for a lot. And this Chardonnay is a prime example of that. We were allowed to really delve into the fine art of winemaking with this particular vintage.
Right.
A lot of times we earn our salary to correct issues or to prevent issues. This particular one was a great year because of creativity for me. So, and I know Bret is sitting there just kind of like, yeah, really? Every year's a great year for you, you whack nut.
No, but I mean, even just getting the grapes from the vineyard, it was just so much easier that year because it was not waiting, or there was a fire we had to put out. And it's like right now, with it being as hot as what it is, we're seeing rapid development of sugars, where they're jumping, very rapidly. And that year, they just kind of they got to sit there and kind of simmer, so to speak. And I think that's probably what is going to mark that vintage as probably the best in our time currently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think 2017 will be the vintage for the slow food movement. It cooked very, very slowly.
Yeah.
You just put it on a simmer in the back vineyard. Yeah. Joe, to your point though about the barrel program, so we try to keep the Chardonnay in brand new French oak, fermented and aged for 2 full years. And that's 100% brand new, which goes against everything I've said for the last 26 weeks, about 30%, with the caveat that there are some exceptions. This is probably the major exception between Viognier and Chardonnay and some of the Sauvignon Blanc. Those are the ones that I like to keep in brand new French oak during fermentation, batonnage, and aging, sur lees. So somebody asked a question earlier, the difference between stainless steel and barrel fermentation. It's really hard to get stainless steel to start fermenting. You got to kind of crush it a lot. There's hardly any sugar left in that steel. The difference primarily, the difference primarily. I know the two of you are a slow uptake tonight.
Well, for me, it was the challenge of whether or not do I acknowledge that joke or
try to ignore me and hopefully I don't get any worse. Yeah.
It's like when your kid's over there coloring on the wall and you're like, do I yell at them or do I wait for them to color the whole thing black?
Let's see how it develops. Look, little Billy is Jackson Pollock. The difference primarily with the barrel aging and stainless steel, the barrel allows for such a slow oxygen interchange that you really keep the fruit there. The barrel does keep the fruit intact. Now, the problem is actual fermentation in the barrel tends to also insulate that wine, and fermentation is temperatures are a little harder to control unless you're in a cool room. So the wood acts both as an insulation for heat as well as protection against the oxygen, the environment. So it is a fine edge that you walk there with Chardonnay, and you'll notice the deeper golden color on this particular Chardonnay because this was 100% French oak, brand new, fermented and aged. So it did pick up a lot of the toasted qualities, and I tend to like a heavier toast on a barrel. On there, so we get the toast qualities. When we say we're tasting oak, we're actually tasting the toast of that oak, not the actual oak itself.
It's just it's incredible to me, because we for so long, I don't think we did more than probably 9 to 12 months aging our Chardonnay in oak, and it's amazing that you get this change. You do get a point at which there's a lot of oak extraction, and then it's this almost, there's sort of a second wave in which the fruit kind of reawakens, and that's usually at the point when we're walking around, John, and Dad and I are begging you to take it out of barrel, and you're saying, just trust me a little bit longer, and it'll be okay.
I think I also said, yeah, sure, not a problem. And then next week, did you get it out? Oh no, I forgot.
Oops,
next
we
week.
got busy.
And Brett is back there going, "You're going to get so fired."
Well, I think at one point we had some kind of a compromise where we suggested that maybe we leave part of it in barrel to see what it tasted like, and the other. And
Right.
I think that was where it finally went over the curve.
Yeah, exactly. No, somebody just said, "I hope John's not getting paid by the joke. I hope his car's paid off." And I'm like, "Hey, Gary, buddy, you're the one that wrote that script last week, and we all read it." So, so what qualities besides the Batard Montrachet, what qualities in here, Joe, do you get?
I love the minerality in this wine. I love on the nose, just an absolutely bright floral note. You could probably name a more specific flower than I can, but I just think it's just absolutely brilliant, and it just releases, and you don't get any oak on the nose. It's almost sort of perfumey. It's very bright. It's very rich.
Yeah, the thing I'm getting is a little bit of linden flower on there,
Mhm.
almost like a sweeter edged flower.
Yeah.
If I really want to get esoteric, I could say night blooming cirrus, because that has that sicky sweet edge too. But Brett, what kind of qualities do you pick up on the wine? And show us your glass too. Are you using those stemless?
No, I actually just have the regular Becker tasting glass, and the reason why is because when I came down here, so I'm in the cellar or in the library at the winery. I drove all over today and left all my stuff here, so I had to come back and grab it and run down here. So I'm in the spot that normally Rachel sits at if she's broadcasting from here. But I couldn't find the Chardonnay glass. I found one that didn't have a stem, but they were dirty. So when I sat down, all crazy things. But I think that the qualities that this wine's showing to me is that it's very well balanced. I don't think the oak is overpowering. I don't think that the ML fermentation makes it too buttery, and it's got a good mouthfeel. Like, to me, it's just in that range. I actually like, and you guys know this, I'm the one that votes for more oak, and I like a little harder oak on my Chardonnay than maybe even this has, but that's just my personal taste. But John, talk a little bit about, because I think people don't understand what flavors would be different about when you ferment in that French oak barrel versus if you just left it in the stainless tank. And that's a stylistic choice. It's not that it's going to be a bad wine.
And Doc hit upon this a little bit on Monday when he started discussing the difference between Chablis and white Burgundy. The Chablis style is much leaner,
Right.
crisp, certainly more fruit forward, where an oaked or barrel aged, fermented and aged, tends to be more volume in the mouth, muted on the floral characteristics, and some of those more subtle toasted notes like caramel or butterscotch or things like coffee edge or vanilla edge come out in that wine. A lot of those are the interplay between the wine itself and the toast level and type of oak.
But talk a little bit about the difference of barrel fermentation versus barrel aging, because I think that's something that, it's when you actually put those 50-gallon batches together and let it ferment independently, right?
Yeah, so the difference is that with barrel fermentation, you're going to have a warmer fermentation. So you're going to blow off some of those phenolics right away, no matter what you do, no matter how cool you try to keep the room, because that barrel is insulated. What you're getting in exchange for that is mouth and development, weight, literally viscous weight on the palate. You want some of that. Now, the fine edge is, why do I do 100% of that in brand new oak and leave it there? Because after 2 years, the terpenes that are actually closed in, so that's where all your floral characteristics live, in this little terpene inside, they cleave open after time. When they bind up, when the free oxygen is bound up with tannin from the barrel, then the terpenes are free to open up, and you suddenly start getting that influx of floral characteristics back. So that's why you need to wait the 2 years. You need to have patience. Now, stainless steel, you get that right away. You're able to keep those floral characteristics, cool ferment. They're there. We do a combination. We do some of our Chardonnay in stainless steel. It's just their particular, this particular one was 100% oak for 2 years. Now, the difference in aging versus fermentation, just aging the wine after it's fermented in the stainless steel, you don't gain as much weight, and you pretty much put it into suspended animation in that barrel. What you have at that point, you will have a year from then. And that's what you kind of want to do to get a balance, so that I have one Chardonnay vineyard, the Canada, or one, the Talent, we have two, but then we end up with 4 or 5 Chardonnay lots done slightly differently, be it yeast, fermentation in tank, fermentation in barrel, aged, fermented in tank and aged in barrel, fermented and aged in tank. So we're able to go back and cross blend and yet maintain 100% Canada Chardonnay, 100% 2017. Okay, that's more explanation than I do.
Well, no, but I think that part is interesting. And if you would take the same grape and obviously change, I mean, if we would have left it in tank and you held that temperature at 50 degrees or 55 or 60, you're going to control it with the glycol system.
Yeah.
Whereas in the barrel, you're really kind of losing the control of temperature to a certain extent without, you're not putting it outside and let it ferment when it's 100 degrees. But
no, but even in our cool barrel room where it's 58 degrees, that wine that thermal mass does not cool down to 58, because fermentation is a process, an exothermic process. It's producing heat on its own just from the kinetics of fermentation. So that heat is insulated in there. So that temperature in that barrel is 65 to 68 degrees. Where the fermentation temperature in the tank is literally at 58 degrees, homogeneous throughout the tank.
hopefully.
Yes. Until you come in at 5 o'clock in the morning and your compressor is down. So Joe, yes.
I want to say too, I do get a little bit of butterscotch in this wine, and I think it's very it's very interesting, especially on kind of the mid to back palate.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. So butterscotch, we have a discussion in our household about butterscotch. I like it. Jody does not. She does not like the flavor of butterscotch. I particularly like the flavor of butterscotch drizzled on top of coffee ice cream, but that's another argument. But yeah, I do. The butterscotch here is very pronounced on there. And that's the interplay, Brett, talking about some other subtle characteristics between the malactic fermentation and the oak. So allowing that to go through primary and secondary in the same barrel without disturbing it, you get some of these more developed subtle flavors of butterscotch instead of just a milky or creamy edge. Instead of just straight butter. A lot of people, what's it like drinking a typical, Chardonnay from California, oak slathered, or a butter slathered oak 2x4, kind of thing. Well, that interplay there allows that raw butter edge to develop into something more like butterscotch or caramel or a deeper coffee edge. And so that's where also the benefit for barrel aging.
And John, did you say this is 100% malolactic?
Yeah, 100% malolactic, 100% 2017, 100% Texas, 100% Chardonnay. I mean, I don't know how you can have all those 100% and be more than the sum of its parts, but apparently we did. Here's to Dr. Feynman and wonderful quantum physics. So, oh, wait a minute, am I getting a little esoteric? What do you get on the taste? Let's get back to the heart of the matter. The really important part is, what are you guys tasting? Brett, what are you getting on the mouth?
I get like a honey melon. It's not so much like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to get that super ripe honeydew, not the one that's too green, just on the edge of maybe going overripe. That's what I get with a little bit of oak, and then it kind of finishes with the alcohol, So Joe, what about you, sir?
Well, and I agree with Brett, but one of the points I was getting at, I think you talked about this earlier, is that and maybe that's what you're saying. That's a process of the barrel aging for about 2 years. Is that you're not overwhelmed by the malolactic fermentation. I love a lot of California Chardonnay, but I do feel like sometimes it's that buttery characteristic is a little bit overwhelming on the back palate, but you don't have that here. It just seems to integrate really well with the minerality and some of the floral note, and the butterscotch is very powerful to me.
Yeah. I just wish that, we're talking about this, and, to be honest with you, I wish Jet would grow some Chardonnay, because I would really love to see the contrast between that, we got these beautiful contrasts with the Cabernet and the Malbecs between Jet and the Canadas.
Is he listening?
Yes, I'm sure he is. He attends regularly. If it's after 4 o'clock, he's usually out of bed. But that poor man's been working a lot lately. So the thing that I love about this particular wine, 2017 to me, is just starting to come into where it needs to be. It's been in bottle for a couple of years. It's just starting to be. And this is where I really love Chardonnay, because you can make a vintage Chardonnay, you can age it for a long time and have a very beautiful white wine. And that's one of the appeals to me as a red wine drinker. I love to be able to do that with a few white wines. You know, and Chardonnay is one of those wines that you could really do it. And somebody just asked a question about, that we never really covered this, but what is it that makes the wine coat the glass or coat the mouth? And that's glycerols that are produced as a byproduct of the yeast. Allowing that yeast to sit in contact with the wine, as long as the lees are healthy in that barrel. I don't rack my barrels very often at all. You know, unless there's an issue or we're getting ready to bottle, we generally keep it on lees for its entire life. Maybe some of it will take early and clear it up, but most of the time the lees provide such a natural protection for the wine, and it also throughout that time period allows that buildup of that viscosity and that mouthfeel. So what you're getting is a very natural byproduct of the yeast acting in that wine.
Well, one of the great, just as a funny aside, one of the great stories in my family is that one summer there was a French medical student who came and stayed with us in the summer, and she went to work with Dad some, went to work with some local physicians, and one night my mom had prepared this amazing meal, and Dad had poured I think it was a Chablis, and she was tasting it, and she started talking about characteristics of how the French taste wine, and relating it to appreciating a beautiful woman, and it got a little PG-13 to R-rated, and at the time I was sitting at the table and I was like, oh my God, and I thought my mother was going to drop, so whenever I hear, drop the dishes. So whenever I hear that story, that always reminds me of this young woman telling that story and sort of catching us all off guard.
Right.
With legs and what,
right.
Dress and so forth.
Right. Well, the one thing that legs do not tell us in the glass is the alcohol content of the wine. Yeah. So please don't make that mistake and think that, if you get lots of legs, the alcohol must be high. Like, no, the glycerols are very high and pronounced in there. So it's that time of the day that we're enjoying this glass of wine. So what's your favorite thing to pair with a good glass of wine?
I'll go first. And I didn't get to see it on Monday, so if my father said this, I apologize. But I have to say, I would love to have this with a Dover Sole, and maybe a Beurre Blanc of some kind. And I know that our chef, I hope our chef is listening, because I think we've run the idea past him.
Yep. Well, I actually told Michael he was going to get fired if he didn't make soufflés.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just creating havoc where I can. Brett, what would be your favorite thing to pair with this wine?
I'm going to go fish too. I think that like a sea bass or scallops, that should just work all day long with this, and that's what I would think.
Oh, sea bass, hell yes, yeah. I'm on that one, absolutely.
Maybe sea bass with scallops on top of them, chopped up, is what I was thinking. Like double, you know what I mean? Like,
oh my God, that'd be awesome.
And then we need some Alba truffles, the white truffles with a little bit of crab or lobster on top of all of that.
Yeah, right.
And we'll just call it a Monday.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of foods that will go with this wine, but every time I drink a glass of Chardonnay, I like to pair it with a quiet evening with Jody outside on our patio. So Chardonnay has always been a perennial favorite in our household. So
cheers to that.
Chardonnay will always bring a grin to my face. So somebody asked a question that I think I need to answer here about what is the difference between racking a barrel and putting it on lees? Well, racking a barrel is the process of removing the clarified wine from contact in the lees in the barrel. So you're basically clearing up the wine. Keeping it on lees means we keep it dirty, if you will, or in the lees suspension for as long as possible. So the lees, though, will eventually settle out by gravity. They end up in the bottom of the barrel. We take what's oddly enough called a racking wand, and then we just suck that clean wine right off the top of that. Then we'll remove the lees from the barrel, clean the barrel, then put the clarified wine back in there. We'll do that once or twice in its lifetime if we need to. Otherwise, I don't do it at all. So that primarily lees are the byproduct of the fermentation, the dormant yeast cells and the bits and particular matter coming from the grape, skins and pulp that all settle together. It looks a bit like mud or pudding at the bottom of the barrel. And no, Angela, it would not be possible to dedicate a wine tasting evening to just getting to know the winemaker, because that would just make me feel very uncomfortable. That was the other question. So
Trust me, this is as much as you want to know him.
yeah, right. Just ask Bret. His office is right next to mine.
I'm with him more than anybody else, I think.
A few 5 or 6 hour car rides out to Tokyo, and you get to know John.
Right. I'll just say that Bret has the patience of a saint. I have not yet once been thrown out of the car along the highway at 70 miles an hour. So, all right. Well, we've covered this. We've covered the barrel program. So what should we look forward to, Bret, in the 2018 on Friday?
Well, I think that, like you said, it's a different vineyard. I think that the new release to that is something that, as we went through our tasting, it just kind of showed itself in that regard. And that's one of the other things that I think that I keep going back to. You mentioned that sometimes one vineyard versus the other, sometimes it's a blend. And when we do these blind tastings to pick these blends, we really do let the wine come out in its own right before we actually pick which one we're going to make in our blind tastings. And so I think that should be fun for the next vintage. I'm kind of toying with having 3 different vintages of the Chardonnay out for sale. I think that we're going to keep the 16 and the 17, obviously. I think the 16 was running a little bit low. I think we're going to let that 18 be out for a little bit and then maybe tuck it back away. But again, we'll leave that up to how it's tasting and all that kind of fun stuff. But I do want to mention that we're going to change our format just a little bit.
Yes, that's important. We need to tell them that.
Yeah, not next week. So next week is the Dias Date, the springtime, and our 2012 Raven, which we actually had people vote on about what they wanted to see for that week. And then after that, I got to come down here in this room and start going through and finding wines that were fun out of the library. And so the next consecutive weeks, we're going to have some library wines that we pulled out, and we're going to taste them all on Wednesday nights because we had a huge outpouring of people wanting to try all 3 wines at once. So we're going to extend our broadcast from 30 minutes to an hour. We'll do something on Monday, probably maybe a harvest update. And then we're going to try to do maybe a food thing on Fridays, but we're going to do these tastings all in one day so that people can really experience those 3 wines starting in 2 weeks. And we got them picked all the way through September. So
yes, and that first one is going to be a doozy. I'm really looking forward to that. We're going to have we will do it all at once. We will take more questions, but you guys are going to have to be a lot more proactive too. You're going to have to start flooding us with some questions. And have we decided about what we talked about before, the pregame?
The pregame for the people that I forgot what it was.
Yeah. We'll talk. We'll make a note of it.
Did I just want to know in a minute or two any harvest updates for today from you guys, Bret, John?
Oh, that's right. We're in the middle of harvest.
Hey, John, that's the other reason why the format might need to go to 1 day a week so we can actually break reviews.
Yeah, so I'm not racing home at the end, waving at all the highway patrolmen as I zoom on. What do you mean it's not 90 miles an hour? So, yeah. No, we did, Joe, we brought in the young block of cab from our back vineyard today. Looks really good. There was not a whole lot on there, but it's soaking up right now in the tank. We also brought in some absolutely gorgeous Tempranillo from Farmhouse Vineyards this evening.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and then we got some Roussanne from Farmhouse as well. So we did 3 different lots today. Yesterday we did Dolcetto from Jet. Let me tell you, and Jet, if you're still on here, that is some damn good looking fruit. That Dolcetto is absolutely fantastic. So we got 19.9 tons of that Dolcetto of pure heaven. So,
And have you seen the tally? We're at about 150 or something like that.
No,
tons?
I tallied up.
Is that right?
I haven't tallied up the last 2 days. So
Last week was 99 tons, I think. And I was talking to Steve Newsom on the phone today, and he was asking me where we were at and where that's in relation to normal. And I said, well, normally we would be at about 400 tons or somewhere in that range, I think. But again,
we'd be close to 500. Yeah.
Yeah, and then in September we would kick in and do the big weeks where we're doing 150 or 200 tons, in 3 or 4 days. But that's obviously not going to happen this year. We could. It's kind of like we turn the machines on, we destem, and everybody was so giddy at the winery. I was telling somebody yesterday on the phone when that 20-ton lot hit from Jet that we got to actually do what we normally do. And everybody got in their groove and unloaded that truck. And I think we got it unloaded and out of here. And the driver's like, it took y'all like 45 minutes to get this thing unloaded. And I'm like, I know, that's, we're ready to go. Let's do this. So,
well, I think it's just important to remind people that, you Brett, you are responsible for harvesting a quarter to a third of the state's wine grapes for the past decade at least. So it's quite an undertaking.
Well, and the people that are doing it, like I'm telling you, the guys, like we were giving Jet a hard time, and somebody might have taken that the wrong way that he doesn't get up till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's because he works all night long. It's not like my college age kid who wants to sleep till 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But
well, we all know he's just laying there watching movies and just being late. Whatever.
Yeah, but I gave him a hard time because he sent John and I an update on sugars. It wasn't last night; it was the night before at 1 o'clock. So he's up. And he sends us the update on sugars, and my phone dinged next to my bed, and I woke up and I'm like, oh crap, what's wrong? And I got up and I looked at it and I was like, oh, it's just the sugars. And I told Jet that if he does that one more time to John's going to come up there and get in a fist fight with him.
That's not true, Jet.
But it was really me living vicariously through John, because I didn't go to sleep for about 2 hours because I worried something was wrong.
Right. Yeah. And you'd be a fool to get a fight with Jet, especially if Gay's anywhere near you.
That's why I was trying to pick it with you instead of me.
Yeah, right. No. No, yeah. So harvest is going along well. We sit here, we have a good time, but it really is heartbreaking. I think we're 70% down straight across the state. So, as far as expected yields go.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, another 2013. So would now be the time to resurrect 100% Texas fruit argument, or should we wait? That, Brett, was the first time I've seen that face in about a week.
Hey, when they grow the grapes, we can do it. That's all I'm saying. But like that Tempranillo that you talked about, it was only 10 tons, and last year it was 90. Right. And so that contracted amount that we had that contract sitting on for the next 5 or 10 years, instead of it being 90 tons like we got last year, it was a whopping 10 tons. And that's why that argument that you kind of stated, I think is a good thing in one sense, but it's kind of a smoke and mirrors kind of thing until we can get it.
It goes, if you see that we're contracted for 1,600 tons, and what we're actually going to end up with is going to be 2/3 less. We break 500 tons this year, that'll be awesome.
But the good news is that we had so much from last year, we're going to be able to span vintages. And if anybody could come to this winery and look at it in these warehouses that we just recently built, they're bulging at the seams with bottled wine. They're bulging with the seams of the barrels that we bought from the last couple harvests. So we're in really good shape because of the fact that we were able to purchase the stuff the previous 2 vintages to span it through. What's going to really kind of stink about the 2020 harvest is all the fun little projects that we get to do. May have to be put off for a little bit because we need to protect our claret and our Cab Syrah and those types of things that are in distribution, so that we keep our shelf space so that we can continue to buy fruit. So,
well, and this isn't the side we're talking about now, is the actual real work side of owning and operating and working at a winery and making a commercial product and being successful. There are a lot of these little hidden things that, it's not just sitting out on a picnic table watching people prune and harvest grapes while you enjoy the last 3 vintages. I mean, that's a great visual, but that's not how it happens.
No.
So anyway, enough lamenting. We're not going to start to sound like farmers. We're going to sound like the eternal optimists, which is thanks to all of the people joining us here and everybody
Absolutely.
who joined us at the winery in the last 2 decades. I fully appreciate the fact that you're keeping me fully employed. So I'm happy to make you a glass of wine. And like all of us here, I hope it brings you a bit of joy and respite in a much needed world. So here's everybody.
Cheers.
Brett, Joe, everybody out there in wonderful Facebook land. Have a great evening. Good health, great wine.